Hi, I'm Lydia, a Digital Marketing Manager at B2B, and this video is about the importance of campaign testing. A campaign test is essentially where you're monitoring one or two variables and seeing how that impacts the overall campaign performance in line with the campaign objective. So you'll look at what works well, what doesn't work well, and a campaign test is usually formed of two parts. You can do an A/B test or you can do multivariate testing. And so an A/B test is also referred to as a split test, and that's where you only change one variable in isolation. So for example, your audience, budgets, objectives and copy might all remain the same throughout a campaign, but the asset that you're changing is your creative, and that will be the variable that you monitor as part of an A/B test. And then you have multivariate testing, which is the opposite, and that's where you'll change a couple of variables in a test, and things like a theme test is what works well, like a multivariate test. So your copy and creative might differ, but then other variables will stay the same, like your audience and your budgets. It's really important that all campaigns are formed around a test, not only to improve that individual campaign's performance, but also to improve future campaigns as well, because you'll build on those learnings for all future amplification. So Harvard Business Review found that businesses that ran 15 experiments in a year saw a 30% higher ad performance compared to businesses that ran no campaign tests at all. So it's really important to build on those learnings. You can look at what's worked well in the past, what hasn't worked well, and that's all incorporated into future campaign plans. The foundation of starting a test is with a research question. So what do we actually want to find out? What's the thing that we want to learn? How's this going to help future campaigns? And you'll start by defining that research question based on a client's brief, what the campaign is, objective, and those kind of things. And then once you've defined your research question, you'll then have your hypothesis. So what is it that you expect is the outcome from doing that test? Are you confident that you're going to see a difference in results? Is it going to be like a one-tail or two-tail hypothesis? And then once all of those things are defined, you'll then go into your methodology. So how are you actually going to execute the test? How are you going to set up the campaign so that you know with 100% certainty, if it's an A/B test, that changing one variable is going to impact the overall performance? So you'll have your research question, your hypothesis, and then your methodology. And then you'll also need to define the KPI for that campaign as well. So how are you measuring the success of that test? Once you've set up the campaign and you're monitoring the performance, what are the key metrics that you're looking at to identify if it's working or not? And then once you've done all of that, you'll go into your reporting phase. So once a campaign has reached completion, you'll then look to report on the performance in line with what that overarching research question was. And you'll look at if the results have statistical significance or not. So by that I mean, can we be 100% certain, and can we be confident that if we did the exact same test again, we would find the same results? Things that impact that can be small data set size. If it's only a small amount of data, then the results might not be statistically significant, so you'll have to repeat the test. And all of those results will be tracked and recorded and then feed into like future campaign planning as well. One thing that we test can be copy, and there's two different approaches that you can take when it comes to testing campaign copy. One of them could be theme tests, so is there different messaging angles that work better and what resonates best with your audience if you have two very different ways of promoting the same thing. An example of that could be if scientific language works better than broader language. And then you also have stylistic copy changes. So does a shorter or longer CTA encourage people to click through more? Does longer or shorter advert copy encourage better advert performance? You can also look at things like, does a question work better than a statement? So it's more focused on the actual style of the copy compared to the contents of it. One result from a recent copy test that we found was adverts that had a longer headline, so the CTA on LinkedIn performed 21% better than adverts that had a shorter CTA, and that was based on the advert click-through rate. So the longer headline had a click-through rate of 0.38%, whereas the shorter headline had a click-through rate of 0.32%. But it is important that you replicate tests and repeat tests across different markets, different audiences, because the results will vary depending on the actual campaign and what the objective is. Outside of testing variables like your copy or your creative, you can also do things around like your audience and your audience demographics when it comes to tests. So examples of that could include excluding specific company sizes from a campaign. You could target specific functions, so does marketing work better than a scientific-based audience? And you can also look at things like job titles against job functions. By testing different demographics and doing your campaign test at an audience level as opposed to an asset level. We also recently ran a test where we changed the audience demographics, so excluding companies above 10,000 employees, and we tested those against a larger audience and then the smaller audience. And doing that, when looking at the demographic insights, we actually reached a much larger scope of our audience. Having too many variables that change within one test, it's fine when you're doing multivariate testing and it's very specific and it's meaningful in the terms of like what you're actually changing. But sometimes the results can get lost if you're looking at way too many factors and it's not centered towards a research question. And that's where it's important to define that research question from the start. So the rest of your campaign plan, your hypothesis, your methodology is all centered towards that, because otherwise you won't get conclusive results. Another thing is taking one result as gospel and not repeating a test across different markets and different formats and different objectives. Even if it's got statistical significance across one audience, that might not be replicated across another. So it's important to continuously test and even repeat tests just so you can be 100% certain that it's the right approach. It's important that you conduct your test across a large enough sample, so making sure your audience size is large enough. If you're doing any landing page or email specific testing, that it's going to a big enough subscriber list, or you have enough visitors on your page to make sure that it's significant. Otherwise, your results won't hold significance, and they might continuously not hold statistical significance if you're repeating them to a really small audience. We hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions on campaign testing, please let us know.